Yeah, I will. She wanted to be here today, but. Good morning. Good morning. I know there's more energy in this room than that. One more time for the secretary. Good morning. Good morning. All right. You hopefully just heard, and these panelists need no introduction, but my name is Neil Bradley. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer here at the Chamber, and it is my distinct honor to be joined by the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, by the Senior Director of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, Ted Chang, and by Jessica Gomez, the co-founder and CEO of Rogue Valley Micro Devices. And so, your first question might be, we're talking about childcare today. What do these three panelists have to help us understand where we can go in developing more access, more affordable childcare for America's working families? And so maybe I'll just start, Secretary Raimondo, you run a big sprawling department. You're in charge of lots of things, from weather to semiconductors to international trade. But you have a passion for childcare, not as an isolated issue, but something that ties in all of the work of the Department of Commerce. Tell us how you came to this issue and how you think about this, both in relationship to how we support working families, but really how we support a growing economy.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. First, I just want to say thank you all for being here. I am struck as I'm on this stage because I think, you know, the point of the CHIPS program wasn't just to make a few investments. It was really to completely revitalize the CHIPS ecosystem, semiconductor ecosystem in America. And the fact that we have on this stage TSMC, you know, the biggest, most successful foundry company in the world, and Rogue Valley, a much smaller, but no less successful and necessary company, I think is pretty cool. And it shows what we're doing in this CHIPS program, which is the very biggest companies, the supply chain. It's a very holistic approach, and we are well on our way to hitting our goal of fundamentally revitalizing this whole industry. And I'm so excited about that. I'm so excited about that. To that end, part of success is workforce. In fact, when I talk to Ted's boss, C.C. Wei, who's the chairman and CEO of TSMC, every time I talk to him, he constantly wants to talk to me about how are you going to get us 5,000 more engineers qualified in the skills that we need in the timeline that we need them. It's his number one issue every time. And in convincing them to expand in the United States, of course, we gave a subsidy, but it really wasn't that. The fundamental thing was convincing him and other companies, we will have the workforce you need with the skills you need when you need them at a price that works with your business model. And that means you need everybody to show up, men and women, mothers and fathers, and that means we need to think about childcare. So the reason we're having this child care summit at the Chamber and not at a social service organization is very intentional. You know, when you said, how do I come at this? I come at it as a businesswoman, as the Secretary of Commerce, because it's just the facts. We're not going to hit the workforce goals unless everybody's in the field, and you can't do that unless you think about childcare. Period, full stop. Now, I'm not here to tell any of these companies how they should think about childcare. Should they provide it? Shouldn't they? That's on them. What I am here to say is, if we're going to have the CHIPS program be successful, we need to find workers. By the way, hundreds of thousands of workers in the trades to build the facilities, and then working inside of them. And that just requires a more thoughtful discussion about childcare, particularly post-COVID, when so many childcare centers went out of business. So the demand is higher than it's ever been. The supply is lower than it's been in the past, which means we got to get creative and we got to partner with business and with the Chamber and with all of you to find practical solutions.
So I want to come back in a moment to talk about implementation, how you're focused on childcare. But first, I want to dive into the point that you appropriately raised, is that we're talking about big businesses and small businesses.
Yeah.
And so, Jessica, you're in the smaller side of the scale. One of those great innovative companies that drive American entrepreneurship, who create new innovations, but sometimes have a difficult time kind of hiring and accessing workers. And so how did you think about childcare and come to this conversation as you were thinking about building your company and your workforce?
Well, it's certainly a workforce issue, a retention issue, a recruitment issue, but it's also something that's really personal to me. I have 2 daughters, and I brought them to work with me. I'm the CEO of this company, and because I have sort of that luxury of doing that, I was able to do that, where many women are really forced to choose between continuing moving forward with their careers and taking care of a brand new, beautiful baby at home. And sometimes that can be a real conflict. And so I want to be able to offer that option to as many people as possible, right? Moms and dads, right? That bond is so important, and it's important for the strength of the family. And if you can help to encourage that, you're going to have a happier workforce. I believe you're going to be able to retain people, and it's going to be easier to recruit. And so we look at this as sort of keeping a healthy and happy workforce and really nurturing that relationship within the family and reducing stress, which I think goes a long way. When you have a very stressful job, we know that manufacturing is tough, being in an engineering field is tough. And so that's part of the reason why our model is on-site. It works for our location. And so we worked with the city to be able to open up the zoning so that we could actually do an on-site childcare. And so I'm really super excited about the potential to be able to have something similar for our employees that I had access to as a mom.
And you have some very interesting models that we're going to dive into in a
Yes.
second that I think could be examples for lots of other businesses of your size. But Ted, let's bring you into the conversation. Sometimes people think, gosh, bigger employers, a company the size of TSMC, you don't have the same challenges when it comes to workforce and the issues that Jessica talked about, but I suspect that's not exactly true, is it? How do you and how does TSMC come to this?
Yeah, TSMC is the first and largest dedicated semiconductor manufacturing company in the industry. And we are basically helping all the major electronic companies to develop their most innovative product, from a smartphone on your hand to the powerful GPU driving AI servers. And I have to say, we actually try our best to recruit people. At the same time, we try to offer them the best benefit. Here at TSMC Arizona, we have already hired over 2,000 employees, and we are planning to create about 6,000 jobs for our initial phases. We have no problem hiring high-skilled employees, but to retain them, I think we have to put in a lot of effort, because they are high-skilled. They can find good offer, good job easily. We are competing with other companies in the United States, so childcare is very important for us as part of the effort that we have to retain our talents. And I think, as part of our childcare commitments, we focus on 3 things. The first one is we try to make it more affordable and easier for our Arizona employee by working with childcare service provider to offer many benefits, such as like 10% tuition discount or $1,800 annual stipends, per child. And secondly, I think we try to work with our local school districts, to enhance the overall childcare system and also the workforce quality. I think that requires us to put in effort, put in investment to support teachers and classroom, providing the support they need. And thirdly, I think what we are doing, what we are focusing on is trying to open a near-site childcare centers by partnering with other employees and also exploiting plans with local real estate development company to see if we can do that to really set up the near-site center for our employees.
Very different model than what Jessica's doing. We're going to dive more into those in a second. But Secretary, I want to return to you. I distinctly remember when the notice for funding opportunity came out from the department, and there were some cheers about the mention of childcare and support for workforce, but it wasn't universal, right? There were some people who were saying, I thought we were doing this semiconductor chips program. Where did this come from? I think you gave a phenomenal answer of what motivated it, but now looking back on it, tell us what the experience has been from your vantage point in the implementation and how the focus on childcare from the get-go at the Department of Commerce has helped support what I think is today a pretty successful rollout and program.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It was controversial. You're being very kind in your characterization. It was absolutely
Hindsight helps, you know.
Absolutely controversial at the time. I had a couple of uncomfortable hearings on Capitol Hill where people were unhappy. This is a national security program. Child care is a social program. Liberal agenda, yada yada. Why are you doing that? So it was controversial, but I never wavered from it because it's necessary. Actually, just listening to you guys talk, I love the approach. This is just, when we put it in the NOFO, the application to get money, we hoped that this kind of a discussion would happen, which is to say practical, right? Like, by the way, forget about the political baloney. Like, this is just practical. How are you going to get the employees you need in the office, for the hours you need them, and retain them? And for you, you're going to do it one way, you're going to do it another way. But my job is to protect taxpayer money. And I knew if we built a bunch of facilities that were empty because they couldn't get the employees, I would have failed. So I just view it as a real practical problem-solving situation. I will say something that Jessica and Ted understand, but it's worth putting a fine point on it. In manufacturing and in construction, you can't work from home. Right? You gotta if you're building a fab, you have to show up at 6 o'clock in the morning with your work belt on, ready to work in person. Same thing if you're working in a facility, like Jessica said. You cannot do this stuff from home. You have to show up. You can't leave halfway through if you have a child care emergency. You can't not show up if your kid's sick. So this is real business, and if your employees leave because they can't show up predictably or they call out sick a lot, that's real money. That affects the bottom line of these companies and your productivity. So I'm not at all, I'm a mother also, like you. I have gone through it myself. I've run businesses. I have 50,000 employees now. Like, I get the personal side of it. I've talked to women in the construction trades who have to show up at, say, 6 o'clock in the morning, and they do crazy things that no mother would ever want to have to do to make sure their kids are cared for between like 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. when the bus shows up. And that's not okay in the United States of America. The children deserves better, and the companies deserve an employee that shows up on time every day. So as far as I'm concerned, we have the capacity as a nation, working in partnership between the government and the private sector, to find solutions. And it's core to America outcompeting the world that we tap into the full potential of everybody's talent.
It deserves applause. It's interesting because, as you point out, it's finding solutions, but the solutions aren't the same every place.
Totally.
Right? And so sometimes the solutions that people end up coming up with surprise people, even people who are close to it. And maybe that was the essence with a lot of observers, Jessica, with the approach that you've taken. So you've decided there's often a perception that on-site care is for the really big companies, right?
Yeah.
And the idea that you have a 100-person operation, you're going to have on-site childcare, and even go a step farther and put the childcare providers on the company payroll.
Yes.
Is not something that a lot of people expected to happen. Why did you go down that direction, and what's been your experience?
Well, there's a couple of reasons why we felt like that was important. One of them is for us, of course, you mentioned it earlier, we're manufacturing, right? We need to have people participating on site. We saw this during COVID where we had, because we were open, right? Being in a clean room happened to be like the best place you possibly could be, right? And so people were bringing their kids because schools were shut down. So we had employees bringing children in, sitting at cubicles, sitting in the conference room. And it's much less of an issue than I think most people would realize, right? We have this sort of I guess this culture that's really not against, but it's developed that there's this really hard separation between work and family, and I think COVID has really showed us that it doesn't need to be that way. Whether you're working at home or you're working at work, we can have those two things be in a symbiotic relationship, right? And that's really become more and more important, which is why people want to stay at home and work from home. But since that's a limited option for us, we felt like this was important. The other thing was that we wanted to reduce cost, right? And in order to reduce cost, we felt like we could best do that by having all workers have the same benefits, really be on the company payroll. We didn't want to have also two sets of different employees that were interacting with each other. We wanted to maintain our company culture, which was also really important to the overall success. And we wanted some flexibility. And so we decided we own our building, which is amazing and wonderful. And so we were able to reduce costs that way, right? And by offering the childcare workers the same benefits as everyone else in the company, that's also another point of retention. And as a parent, going through multiple childcare providers and having that disruption, I think is really unhealthy. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to retain the best teachers available for our kids, that we were able to have sustainable long-term programs that parents would feel comfortable using. And that's why we chose to do it ourselves. And we're going to look at probably a 25, we're hoping for 30% reduction in sort of cost to our parents. We're going to subsidize a good portion of that. But the way we look at it is, if you take a look at that and you amortize it over your entire workforce, it works out to be about $240 per employee. So compared with a medical benefit where we're paying $1,500, we pay for all of our employees and their families for medical benefits. In comparison, we're paying $1,500, $1,600 per family for medical benefits. And so we felt like, okay, this might be doable, right? And that's where we really started, was what were those goals and how we were gonna sort of amortize it across the board so that we can come to a place where that's really we're looking at it as a benefit. And we think we balance that by not having to train as many people over and over, right? Because whenever you lose someone, that training cost is a huge expense. It's about 6 months to train even just a wafer technician.
It's interesting because the turnover costs accrue obviously to the company
Yes.
and impact all of your employees, and you've begun to think about the costs and benefits side of providing childcare as a benefit that accrues to all of your employees through the company. That's an interesting way to think about the business costs and benefits in a way that is actually more applicable to the way we treat other employee benefits and savings. That's There's much more. We don't have time, but there's much more to dive into
Actually,
on that.
I have an idea for your next Child Care Summit, which is you should get a few companies up here talking about their particular approach to childcare, because the different models have pros and cons. And like Jessica's an amazing entrepreneur, clearly. But if you had 5 companies up here, they'll all have 5 different ways to approach the problem, and people in the audience could learn from that and figure out, okay, these pros and cons, costs and benefits are what we need.
We'll do it. I promise that. We'll invite you back.
I'll be gone. Make him do it.
Somehow I suspect you're going to be
lurk.
around
I'll lurk.
and influential. But we can do a little bit of that right now. So Ted, like you started to talk a little bit about TSMC's investment. You were probably informed, though, by the experiences of operations of TSMC in Taiwan. What learnings did you bring, and what differences did you see operating the facility in Phoenix?
Very different. Very different.
And not just the heat.
Yes, and we are learning. We are learning, and we are trying to improve every day, every way we can. And I think, maybe I can share a little bit about what we are doing.
Please.
The child care in Taiwan. Okay, but before I talk about what we have done in Taiwan, I want to share a fun fact. In 2023, TSMC employee welcomed 2,463 babies into the world.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that actually it's about 1.8% of all the baby born in Taiwan that year.
Oh my God.
1.8.
TSMC.
Pretty amazing, right? Yeah. So I have to tell you, we have been working very hard on creating an inclusive, diverse, and supportive workplace for our employees so that they can really balance their family and their work. And I think, if you know that we actually opened 4 childcare centers, kindergartens across 3 different locations. And I think, we offer a safe and also a high quality learning environment with the childcare service from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for over 500 children of our employees.
Wow.
So you can tell we put in a lot of effort.
Yeah,
That's a big deal.
We put in a lot of effort, and we try to do our best in Taiwan, and we are very firm, and we are committed to do the same thing. We will replicate what we have done here to support our employee in the United States. This is something that we are looking for. We are trying to work with City of Phoenix, City of Peoria, and some other employer like MCOR, our back-end partner. And also we are working with local school districts and even real estate development companies so that we can really see what are the true model that we can replicate and we can work together to bring in the experience that we have in Taiwan here.
That's incredible.
Love that.
Well, they're awesome.
Yeah.
And like I suspect a lot of people in the room, I'm now going to go find out how many babies we welcomed amongst U.S. Chamber employees in the last year. That's I never thought about that. That is a phenomenal stat to know that refocuses how you think about your workforce, your employees, and supporting them. It's also an incredibly fun fact to compare with folks.
It is true.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. We only have just a moment or so left, so I want to give the final word to Secretary Raimondo. We are going to bring folks back. We will talk about different experiences. But I just want to give you the floor to share your experience.
Yeah.
Governor of Rhode Island, Secretary of Commerce. One of the things that marked your tenure in Rhode Island, and I think has marked it here in DC, is figuring out those public-private partnerships and what works. Mm-hmm. And so we got a lot of people here who believe in public-private partnerships to solve really hard problems.
Yeah.
Advice for this group as you think about how we continue to push ahead to solve some of these big challenges by having government and business work together.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for hosting me. Thank you guys, both very busy people, for being here, and all of you. My mom, who passed a year ago, a month before her 92nd birthday, was the kind of person who, even at 91, and thought like tomorrow was going to be her best day. And her best piece of advice that she would give out to anyone who wanted to listen was just keep going. And it's really awesome advice. It's so simple, 2 words, keep going. But if you think about it, it's really the right advice for anything. Any problem you're trying to solve requires perseverance, creativity, hope, and just keep going. So that's what I would say. I think that the biggest problems that America faces will only be solved when the public sector and private sector work together in a spirit of practical problem solving and collaboration. And I've done this my whole career, and I've seen it work. It does work. So in this issue, job training, worker retention, by the way, the retraining that'll be required because of AI, providing adequate child care, all tough issues, complex, globally important, I think will be solved if everybody in this room and in the Capitol Hill and in the halls of state houses says we're going to work together, block out the noise, and just figure out a solution. So I'm quite confident. I'm eyes wide open about the magnitude of these challenges, but really think if you just keep going in that spirit of collaboration, we will find solutions. So thank you. Happy holidays.
That optimism, that can-do spirit, and good advice to keep going is exactly what we need today. Everyone join me in thanking Ted, Jessica, Secretary Raimondo.
Thank you.
And keep going. Move back this way, Secretary.